Good evening, all, and welcome to the Huddy Hui, episode 4. Along with us tonight is the wonderful and ever-talented Adam Julian. Adam, fantastic as always to having you on tonight. We've got a fantastic guest joining us.
Absolutely, we do. Gisborne's Ben O'Brien-Leaf really is a one of a kind, a rugby raconteur, a basketball referee, a spin bowling guru, and a connoisseur of KFC, which I've never seen before. So Ben O'Brien-Leaf will join us tonight to tell his story from Gisborne. But in the meantime, Brad, you have some footage of this extraordinary individual.
Oh, we certainly do, Adam. And we are going to play you some clips from Club Rugby up in Poverty Bay in the East Coast. So here we go. Joys of technology, eh?
Lovely to catch up with Sean Wainui earlier. Lots of good people here from two great clubs. And the report needs to go back to the rugby union that the game was incident-free, it was well controlled, and it flowed. It should be reported as such. 32-26. Is this Ngati's last chance? Is this the making or breaking of them here? It's Sione Ngati. Sione Ngati, close to the line. He's held there. Ngati, great ball again. They've got good ball there. That's Matt Cooper. Over 2 meters tall and so close. Incredibly close. It's Sione Ngati. They've got to try bash him back. Carl McPherson. Pass up Kanodia. Kanodia, does he get there? He does get there. He scores a try. Kanodia there with a try. For 32-31. 32-31. Trying Artipa. Waikahu has won 9 in a row. But goal kicking. At the start of the day, to be honest, both teams, both guys missed fairly basic kicks at goal. Now Richardson.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the voice of rugby from the Poverty Bay in East Coast. And he is our guest tonight on the Huddy Hui. Kia ora, Ben. Thank you for joining the Huddy Hui tonight. How is life up there in paradise, that is Gisborne?
It's absolutely fantastic. And the reason it's so good at the moment, Brad, is that everybody here has been very obedient. People have been loving their bubbles, haven't had much of a choice. They've been staying home. They haven't, the teams and everybody has bought into the fact, across all the sporting codes, even individual sports, that it's just not business as usual. And that for the sake of our general welfare and health, sports people in particular have got to fall in behind. And that they have done, and that's why we haven't got any COVID. It's spectacular. Our people have been brilliant, I've got to be honest.
Tell us about your introduction to commentary. Your voice is synonymous with the Bay of Plenty, the Poverty Bay area. How did this all begin?
Well, it began a long time ago. Obviously, like most kids, I loved a range of sports. Probably the first sporting event I really went crazy over probably would have been football. 82, 86, the Football World Cups. My grandfather never talked much, but he did take us along to Childers Road Reserve to watch the local team. Gisborne City was National League at that stage. And obviously, football, any sort of sport, New Zealanders love sport, but watching Maradona, none of us knew anything about football, but we knew he was pretty good.
You look like him now.
The crowd, that's something that really got us going. And also, listening to Victor Hugo Morales with Goal that never ended. Those are some of those are my earliest memories of sport.
And Gisborne Boys High School had a profound impact on your sporting pursuits.
Yes, Gisborne Boys High School did. Our school has always prided itself, the people there, on being doers rather than talkers. In my case, I couldn't do. So you had to talk. I was very enthusiastic about the rugby tradition that we had, and it meant so much to the school. And where it was different was that you came through as a third former back in 1989, and there were guys that you knew that played rugby. And in the fourth form, they played rugby. And you slowly started to see them fill up teams. Oh, so-and-so made the under-15 team. So-and-so made the seconds, which, so-and-so made the first 15 or the widest squad. And back in 1991, when I was a fifth form, we had 3 15-year-olds in that first 15 squad. Now, that's a big call. And, of course, we had a new coach in Kim Harris. So to have 3 15-year-olds, that was, that was pretty big.
Give us an insight into that tradition in Gisborne. I don't think there's a lot of people around New Zealand that necessarily understand how deep this runs. But in Gisborne, when the Boys High First 15 is playing, people in the dairy are talking about it. People on the streets are talking about it like it would be an all-black test. And in 1994, Gisborne won the national championship, and you were very much in the heart of that team.
I was very lucky. Many of us were second-year 7 formers at that stage. We had a big, strong team. Not like some other schools. There are other schools, where you get year 14s and 15s, and some of them are doing year 10 maths. But I digress. We had a team that year that there was great enthusiasm for rugby. There's always been enthusiasm for rugby. 93, 92, and 91 were good teams as well. But that particular year, there were honours calling. We really felt that we had a chance to win some gold, and there's a special enthusiasm and an excitement around the place when you know that you're actually capable. And in those days, the fitness of players, of our players, I can only speak to that. The fitness of the players, the team harmony, the closeness, and the focus was huge. These days, there are probably kids can do different things. These days, nationwide, a kid can say it. I mean, he can go to his coach and say, look, boss, I can't be here this weekend. We've got a big event. It's, a cousin of mine is going. You just didn't do that back in 1994. If you were playing rugby, it was a funeral. Funeral, you got off. Otherwise, you were playing. And those boys loved their rugby. They were fanatical about it. It was a huge year. One of our greatest years, to be honest.
Who were the personalities involved, and what kind of impact did that have in your future following rugby as a profession? Okay,
well, the big personalities who were in that team, obviously our captain was Daniel Godbold, who went on to play for King Country, and he was a fantastic player, tight end, prop forward. Dan weighed 57 kg back in 1989, and he was considerably stronger by 1994. I mean, he was a fantastic player. His parents were 2 of the most supportive people you've ever seen. Mark Jefferson was a very, very good player. He was in that team. He was a captain in 1995. We were strong. We're actually, New Zealand rugby people, there are certain words that are buzzwords your ears pick up. That was a strong team. And it played that way. And people, wanted them to play well and see how well they could play, because we've never stopped hearing about how great the teams were in the 70s. And they were very good. But that 1994 crowd, at least in my experience, is the best boys high school team that I've seen. And they were very good. And I can remember at the end of your dinner, where we had the heads of the Say Cheese Top 4 tournament, officials from New Zealand Secondary Schools Council, all the rest of it. And a lovely bloke called Jim Kerr, James Kerr's father, turned around to me and said, you've got a little bit of a start here. He said, the truth is that there are opportunities now to get involved in rugby. And the truth is these days, I'm just going to put it like this. I'll put it this diplomatically. Your background doesn't matter. If you love rugby and you love sport and you can speak well and you're well researched and whatever else, you've got an opportunity. Whereas perhaps up until that point, it was formulaic. Is that as polite as I can put it? In some ways, formulaic isn't bad, but it's great that these days people get an opportunity. You've got to make sense, though. It's imperative.
All right, Bed. So what we're also going to be doing throughout our Hui tonight is we've got some questions coming up on the Facebook live feed, so we'll ask those later on. A few years ago, World Rugby did a video on you about your commentary up at the East Coast in Poverty Bay. And one of the key things about you and having commentated with you, Ben, is that you always talk about painting the picture on a rugby field so that the audience know what's happening, where the ball's going, where the player's going. Tell us about that picture, but also how did you get involved in rugby commentary?
Okay, to really start doing it seriously, the manager of our Gisborne Boys High School First 15, Steve Williams, that was back in 1992, came to me and asked if I'd like to do the reports on the matches played by the team for the Gisborne Herald. Now, the chief reporter in those days on sport was John Hill. So John Hill covered a lot of sport, the late John Hakel, of course, with rugby as well. And I had the job of watching the team play its club games and get them in. I've got to tell you, my first few efforts at that, probably the first few years, I've only actually been any good in about the last 3 or 4 years. Prior to that, it was hopeless. But you had to watch games. I didn't have a clue when I first started in the fifth form, or rather sixth form, Brad. I was too frightened of the coach to go to the coaches before the start of the game to get the numbers of the players in their team. I tried desperately to run up to people I thought might have scored a try during the game and grab them before they ran off, which I could never do because they walked off, obviously. And the scores were never right. So I was terrible. And what happens is that you make enough mistakes, and to be honest, you get abused enough, and you start to do a better job. And the most you'll get in this country a lot of the time is a grunt or a bit of a half harumph, and that tells you that, it's not bad. When people really think you've done a great job, they'll say, hey, I saw that, it was pretty good, or, it wasn't bad. That's high praise around here. They don't gush. We had a piece that was a very good piece that went into print on, I think it was either Friday or Saturday, on Ian Kirkpatrick being made the patron of the New Zealand Rugby Football Union, New Zealand Rugby. That piece is an awesome piece, not because I wrote it. It's an awesome piece because of what Ian Kirkpatrick has done for and achieved in rugby. That's what makes it awesome, not me. Yeah. And if the people you're writing about are interesting, or the people you're commentating about are interesting people, you really don't have to do that much except tell the truth.
So in terms of your approach to the commentary, who are your role models, and why are so many commentators so sterile?
A lot of commentators no doubt know that if they don't say anything controversial, they're not going to get into trouble. If you've got somebody who can do basically a good job of getting the names right, not upsetting people, then he might be useful next week. I think that you can do that and be yourself. And we in this country have got a lot of, very, very good commentators. Some of them are very knowledgeable. Some of them are interesting. Some of them, historically worldwide have been extremely interesting. In terms of myself, role models, I don't think anybody will ever be better than Bill McLaren. And I think that his research was outstanding. But there's something else that happens when you write stuff down. It's not so much going over it, poring over it again and again and again that makes you any good. I think it's actually more the writing down of it that makes you any good. Bill McLaren won. I love Dick Vitale's enthusiasm, college basketball analyst. Darryl Eastlake, obviously, from State of Origin. Colonel Bob Sheridan from boxing. Bud Collins from tennis. Mike Miller, WABC radio, with ice hockey. I love those English boys. Mike Stevenson, that's right, and Eddie Hemmings. They were the real north of England, that crowd. There are some, and I love Miles Harrison and Stuart Barnes. There are lots of commentators on the national scene, as you well know, Adam. Keith Quinn, most encouraging to youngsters, not just knowledgeable, but passionate about what he did, enjoyed what he did, loved what he did. Mace Carmo, Ken Laban, people who, you have experts like Ken, people who are experts, and then you have people like me, whose expertise is about the size of your little finger, who have enthusiasm, maybe a wordsmith away with words, but just about every rugby coach and every rugby player I've ever met knew more about rugby than I did. But that's not bad. If you can do this, Brad, if you can get the names out and the names are the right names and you pronounce them as well as you can and you make an effort with it, if you've got the time, you've got the name, that's a good start. If you haven't got the names and you haven't got the score and you haven't got the time, nothing else happens.
Grassroots rugby, when did that start? And when did the following become as big as it has become?
2001 from memory. 2001, I remember annoying our executive producer, great man, Graham Veach, and I was a real pain in the bottom. And I contacted him. He had no idea who I was. And I didn't know much about Mr. Veach, and asked him whether or not, because I knew that Gisborne Boys High School were playing a game of rugby against Rotorua Boys High School, very strong at the time in 2001. But that particular day, Liam Messam ran us over and he scored 4 tries. our captain of Gisborne Boys High School at that stage. We had Jose Gear in the team too, as well as Craig Clark, who you'd remember. So we had some good people, but Messon was just incredible. He was carrying a little bit extra, but God, he ran through us and he ran round us and over us, and he was incredible. He was very hard at that stage, at that level. He was very hard to stop. And the following has always been big. People who watch club rugby, and the coolest thing about the show, I think, is the fact that it's shown so often through a week, and of course on free-to-air television on a Sunday, that if you miss the first screening, you can always catch it at some stage. You may be, wake up with a sore head at 10 o'clock at night and turn on TV, and you may catch it then. So you can always pick it up. That the teams are recognisable, the people involved be recognisable to you if you're from that locality. And I've never forgotten one thing. You give it the best you can, and you make it, you can't fake enthusiasm. You've got to be enthusiastic about it, because it could be somebody's last game, somebody's first try, somebody's last try. And if you want a really big parallel, how about this, Adam? I can remember, I think it was the 1990 Winfield Cup Grand Final. I think Royce Simmons, from memory, if memory serves me correctly, for Penrith, he may never have scored a try in his first grade career, and I think he scored 2 in his last game in the NRL Grand Final. So whether it was 90 or 91 escapes me, but yeah, that's a guy that you might not have thought was going to do anything on the day gets a couple, and unbelievable. Some of these people are similar too, to see them get a try in their last game.
That's a great story, that one too, Ben. And Royce said after the grand final that he'd have a beer with every single person in Penrith, and there are people even now who yell his name out the window of bars. Hey, Royce, we haven't had our beer yet, and they share a beer with the great man who scored 2 tries in the grand final. The other thing about that grand final was that Bradley Clyde on the losing team was the MVP. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, much the same reception for Newcastle when they won it in '97, especially the way they won it with Darren Albert. People love sport, and at grassroots rugby level, people look forward to these games because the skills, especially of the young men who are participating, and the East Coast rugby competition at the moment, the club rugby competition. There are some fine players, some very, very good players. Poverty Bay turning out players who are very good as well. I mean, we've seen some people elsewhere. Jamison Gibson Park. We've had Bodine Waka. We've had people whom you will have seen, Adam, that have turned out for Wellington. We've had people who are very good sports people. Going further and further. So it didn't just happen back in 1950. We're still turning them out.
Oh, Ben, we've got some questions here on the live feed for you. But one of them links in with what I was going to ask you. What is one of your most famous games of rugby you commentated? But one of your mates here by the name of David Milne has also asked what's some of your most humorous moments in rugby commentary?
Okay, well, David was with me, and here's one. The union gave him the important job. And I'm going to bring this up. Sorry, David, because you're the one that's gotten on to me at this stage. I was in the commentary box. I was on the bottom level, and David was with me. The cameramen obviously were up top, and he had the job of adjusting the scoreboard, which he did. The only thing was that when I first got there, we had 3 chairs, Brad. One chair was occupied by another person. There was another chair for me, and there was a chair that was pretty rickety. As a matter of fact, it wasn't in a good size, a plastic one. And I didn't put that chair there for him to sit on it and pray. I actually put it somewhere else. And he grabbed it and sat on it. And I watched him closely. And as soon as he got the chair, he sat down straight hard on it. And one of the things about a flaky chair, if you sit down on it quite quickly, what happens is that I suppose the feet are sort of locked in place. They don't have a chance. The legs don't have a chance to go sideways. But if you move it into the either way, obviously, the legs are going to, hi-yo silver. And during that particular game, for whatever reason, one of the legs gave way. I think it had certain structural deficiencies. David did a fantastic job on a voluntary basis for the union last year. But that was fun. That was genuinely funny. He went backwards. I started yelling my head off. Upstairs, the cameraman had already said, "Don't shake the place. If you move even a tiny bit, the camera shakes. Don't do it." And of course, when he went down in a heap, it couldn't really be avoided. And by the way, I think from memory, David's from Wellington too, Brad. So
yes.
Maybe you guys in Wellington, it's a coordination issue. I'm not sure.
It's anything like Adam and I. We're some of the most uncoordinated people you know. So, also another one from David Milne here. What was your best team from your beloved Old Boys Marist Club?
Oh, well, the club was formed in 1996, and I think did incredibly well to make the grand final in 1996. Won the club grand final in 1997. I'm going to say that was the most memorable team because, of course, the grand final that day was the most memorable grand final. It was decked out in blue and white and red and signs up all over the place. Two clubs, Old Boys and Marist, came together brilliantly, and on that particular day, they just fired and were absolutely fantastic. McKinley runaway try at the end. There were ribbons all over. It was just red, white, and blue. It was fantastic, and I just remember that atmosphere and the enthusiasm and the vibe of OB. 1-5 in a row from memory was going for 6, and so 97 was a special team because it was a special year.
Tell us about 2012. Ngati Porou, East Coast, Whanganui. It's 24-0 to the visiting team at halftime, and East Coast win. An incredible match in the New Zealand rugby history, and you were there covering it. Can you capture the atmosphere of that day?
Okay, well, that atmosphere came in 3 parts. Now, prior to the game, the atmosphere was bubbly, was convivial, was absolutely fantastic. Had, the helicopter come in. It was brilliant. That was atmosphere 1. Atmosphere 2 was up to half time, and that's when Wanganui got out to, I think from memory, you're a little bit kind to us actually, Adam. I think it was 27-3, so they had more points. I think they were 27-3 up, I'm not sure. The coast was on the board with a penalty, but at half time they were shattered, and I've been told the boys were in the dressing room, so I've been told, and just hardly anybody could say a word. They were doing the haka in the grandstand, and obviously the ladies were singing and all the rest of it. That might have inspired them a little. But they came back out, and what they did was they just went back to good old East Coast rugby. They got their hands on the ball. They trucked it up the middle. The rolling maul, which had been a big weapon against Hawke's Bay in previous years, and obviously against Wanganui the year before that. And they just took the ball up the middle, and they slowly came back into the game. They held Wanganui pointless in the second half. Wanganui also made a number of changes to their team at the halftime break. And the coast came back wins 29-27. What they did was incredible. I'd be prepared to go on the record and say, especially in this modern era, I can't ever see any team ever being down by 24 points at a halftime break and coming back and winning it, because the higher you go at them, where you are, whether it's Super Rugby or whether it's the top tier, ain't no way that, for instance, Canterbury is going to be up. The Crusaders are going to be up by 24 points to 3, and then or 27 points to 3, and then they're going to lose. That'll never happen. Happened at our level because the coast played so well, and Wanganui were possibly overwhelmed by the occasion. It does generate some atmosphere, Whakarua Park, and it's an easy game to referee for the likes of the people that have to control these games. It's not easy. Sheldon Fighter controlled that game, and I thought he had a pretty good game. And a very hard game to cover. Covered that. People loved it nationwide. It was a very popular result. And of course, the boys lived off that for the next few weeks, no doubt about it. It was brilliant rugby, and they deserved the win.
Speaking about East Coast, Ben, just within the last week, some big news at the New Zealand Rugby AGM. Give us your thoughts on Bailey Mackey being appointed to the New Zealand board. Of course, Bailey's well known up in the East Coast of his production company, but he's also the president of East Coast. What do you think his appointment to the board, what impact will that have on East Coast rugby, but also for Māori rugby?
Bailey, of course, he's on the major board. He's on the New Zealand Rugby board, and Kushler's on the Māori board, Kushler Tangaire Emmanuel. What Bailey will bring to the board, and of course the chair is still Brent Impey, former head of Media Works. So you've got people with real media acumen these days on the board. It's not like the 70s, where the chairman used to appear in front of the press with a note that had been approved by other members, and he just read out from it and then left. You can't get away with that these days. What those guys will do, they understand the need to promote rugby, what popularises rugby, the fact that these days it's not just, heavily built blokes leaning on the bar. You do have a lot of girls and ladies playing. The recognition of, For instance, Māori rugby, all people playing rugby really. And Bailey, I think, is a person, for a start, he's a lovely guy, he's a nice guy, he's a very friendly guy, he's an approachable guy, he'll talk to anyone, and he wants to see people do well. To be nominated by East Coast and have that supported by Poverty Bay, these people here are not easily impressed. If they've nominated you and they've backed your nomination, then they think you're worth supporting, because by God, they wouldn't otherwise. And I think, I'd expect him to be the centre of, or to be part of some really neat conversations or people talking and share some ideas. Again, the neat thing about he and Kusa is they're not people who poo-poo other people's ideas. They're very positive people. They'll take good feedback and they'll listen to other people, and they'll compromise and they'll talk and they'll want what's best for everybody, not just a selfish clique that belongs to a few. They'll be creative, because you have to be. You have to understand business and the way it works, because these days, again, you don't have dinosaurs on the board. You have to understand the way of the world and the almighty dollar, which they certainly do. I expect big things, to be honest.
Very briefly, Ben, take us through some of your other roles in Gisborne. You're a very enthusiastic cricket coach, very capable one, I understand, and basketball officiating is one of your tasks around town. It's not just rugby that Ben O'Brien Leaf is known for in Gisborne.
These are things that I've always loved, and whenever people have asked me about it, I just put it like this. My favourite game, my favourite sport is basketball. Rugby is the national game. It's our sporting religion. It's something that, our Sunday is Saturday. It's something that you can't live without. You can pay no attention to rugby right throughout the week, but on Saturday, you leap up because you're going to rugby. It is something that I actually can say in this professional era that I look forward to, probably because my involvement with rugby, aside from, writing newspaper previews and that, is going to games on a Saturday and having, only to deal with those sorts of things makes you look forward to it more. So that's one of the things. In terms of, basketball, obviously it's a very exciting, fast-moving game. And, of course, if you're a third former like I was, Adam, back in 1989, we were just hitting the Jordan era. So obviously you're going to be a big basketball fan if you're coming through there. And cricket, I've had the privilege to coach Gisborne Boys High School cricketers and to work with a number of young juniors from all the different schools, whether it's, Nathan Trowell's a very good cricketer at Boys High, or it's Blake Marshall at Campion, whoever it is. We've got a lot of kids, boys and girls, who are very good cricketers, and I'm very proud of them. It's a real privilege, and I'm not speaking for everybody, to have been a failed sportsman. Adam, I failed. To have failed and get an opportunity to actually help people who are really good. And it's not because you want credit, because you don't deserve any credit, and nor should you get it, but just to actually, you always dreamed of being able to play a cover drive like Brian Lara, and you never could. But this kid can play a shot something similar. And that's what motivates. You want to see them do well. And when they do well, they love the game more, and you can communicate a little bit of your passion. They're never going to share your total devotion to the game, and they're going to think some of your attitudes are antiquated and, totally uninteresting, but they like the game, and that's enough.
I used to keep a notebook of my cricket scores, and I calculated the notebook scores after 2 years, and I ended up with a batting average of 3.9. I'm convinced if I used the full face, it might have got to 4.
Yeah. Well, that's possible. You could have told the bowler to slow down as well. I mean, I played I played so few decent cricket shots. I can remember the 2 best drive shots I ever played. One was off Stanley Blake. We played United on my way to the slowest 50 in history of Poverty Bay cricket. And the other one was a cover drive I played against a lovely old fellow called Garth Marchbank. That went for 4 to point. That's how few decent shots I played. I can remember each one. But, being involved in sport is a privilege. Being from a smaller area too, more of the people involved. At the start, to be honest, Brad, I'm not sure if all sports announcers go through the same thing. When I first started, people hated me. They thought, oh, he's an idiot. He doesn't have any idea what he's talking about. He's rubbish. But what happens is that you carry on being rubbish, and slowly but surely you cannot get worse. So you almost accidentally get better, like, oh, this week the scores were right. Or, oh, this week you pronounced, at least you've got the names. And slowly but surely you haul yourself up out of the muck. to the point where people actually, they think you're a good job. You do a decent job. They're never going to appreciate the style or lack of it, but they do appreciate the fact that you like rugby. People, especially here in Gisborne, they take a long time to come around. But I suppose that's what makes them more satisfying when they do, because when they do come around and say, "G'day, how are you?" or whatever, it means they've got some sort of regard for you, which is nice.
That's fantastic, Ben. Excellent story there. We also have another interesting question here to ask you. Of course, one of the big events in Gisborne at the end of the year is Rhythm and Vines, R&B.
Yeah.
And of course, Adam told me this story earlier in the year, is that you are the mayor's representative at Rhythm and Vines. Is that correct?
I have never laid claim to such a title. You tell Adam to check his facts, and you tell Adam that, look, my role at Rhythm and Vines is to try hard as I can not to trip up and fall over whatever cabling has been left. I get out there very late. I might add, though, at this point, that even though Adam's information is wrong, we are extremely well led. And we have every right to make a case, for opening our bubble because we've been so well behaved. But I would like to say that it is a fantastic event, certainly second to none. From the time it came about, the people here work very hard. You do see sports people, Brad. Sports people. Their cuts. You see them here in their droves in various stages. So it is nice to catch up with them all. I mean, I've seen All Blacks here. I've seen one or two notable cricketers here. And you see lots of famous people. Kim.com came one year. I think he came on his own helicopter from memory. I think he flew in. I do.
And anyone that knows you really well, Ben, knows that you appreciate a red and white box full of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Where did this prodigious appetite for Kentucky Fried Chicken come from? And what's your record of consumption for KFC? The only guy I've met who could possibly eat more KFC than you is Jonah Lomu, and that's saying something.
Yeah, no, well, I don't know. I never saw Jonah eat KFC. I can tell you that's a cheap shot. There are 35,000 other people in this town that eat KFC. And the line from memory, even though it was heroic this time round, when we came out of lockdown, wasn't quite, I don't know if it was superior to the line we'd had before. I have heard tales in the distant past of people, getting paid a big whack to go to Whakatane, bring up orders and bring them back during lockdown. But that was for different reasons. That's because they were refurbishing the place. People love it. It's a tradition. I don't know if it's just Gisborne or New Zealand or whatever, but you tell people, you can't eat that or you shouldn't eat it, they'll eat it. The best way to make people not eat something is to go near it, sort of sniff at it and go away and eat something else. They'll probably think it's horrible and they'll stop. But the more you tell these people, that's what you've seen nationwide with takeaways all over the country. People don't like being told what to have. They don't like being told how many, grams of sugar or salt it's got in it. They don't like, and you know what makes people run back there? I'll tell you, I've been watching Facebook in the last few days. It's been all of the people who've popped up and said, look, I'm really disappointed now the takeaways have opened at seeing all of this when people have been eating so healthily. Mate, as soon as you say disappointed, this crowd nationally, they just rub their hands in glee and run off and grab another box. People don't like to be dictated to, and they won't. They'll eat concrete no matter how horrible it tastes if somebody tells them they can't. That's
what have you been eating during the lockdown?
I may have discovered something even better. They have the Teasel, Louisiana chicken portions, which I'm going to go into that for. That's really good. And also silver beet. I've cooked my first silver beet. People told me I had to take 2 or 3 stalks. I had to chop it up, put it down the bottom of a pot. The truth is 2 or 3 stalks was, a bit ridiculous. I found I got by on 1 stalk, but it was okay. I really had no choice because there were no takeaways open. And I either had to learn to cook or, I starved. And so I learned how to cook a little bit better. I'm not God, I'm not master chef, but I'm better than what I was, which isn't hard.
And a couple more things, Ben. Tell us about some of the colleagues that you've had in commentary over the years. So much of commentary is about building a chemistry with your partner. How do you work with a partner with such a commanding voice and presence?
I absolutely love it. I love it, and I'll reiterate again. Just about everybody that I've ever met around the game knows more about the game than I do, and that means that this last Central Sevens tournament, which was held and Levin, where we were there covering that. I had Christian Cullen as a comments man. To have the opportunity to sit next to Christian Cullen and have a chance to talk to, not about his career and that all through the game, because that's silly, but to have a chance to ask him about the modern game or what the tactics are. And he, for instance, pointed out to me, here's some solid gold for you. He, for instance, stressed to me the importance of the kickoff, and the team that controls the kickoff controls the game. Basically on the premise that they control the time and etc. He was brilliant. So was Alice Soper. So, the year before, we had Glenn Lama there as well. I mean, I've had people who know rugby are a joy to be with because they supply the knowledge in terms of replay. They pick up stuff that you never thought of. And of course, no disrespect to the co-commentators or the analysts of yesteryear, but these people are more confident speaking. Even if they've never done it before, they understand television possibly a little bit better. And they're neat. I love it. I love to come in for big moments. Somebody grounds the ball in the corner or the conversion attempt curves back in and goes through. Those things are cool. But if you want to know what's happening in the game, if you've got somebody who knows it that can talk about it, I would rather commentate with someone who knows what they're talking about, as long as they've got, a sense of humour and they speak reasonably well. Not one that grunts, not one with monosyllabic answers, not one that's speaking or two-syllabic, not one that, the classic New Zealand, which is, yeah, not bad, pretty good. People get tired of that. It was all right back in 1980, but, we've sort of moved past it a bit. So have people who talk is good.
Well, Ben, it's been awesome having you on the Hui tonight. Thank you for your time. We might just stick around because we've got one or two more discussion topics to talk about. One of them, of course, we talked about off air before, of which was announced yesterday, which was, of course, Ben, one of the big news that came out last night on the breakdown, due to the fact that New Zealand Rugby's got a 5% share in Sky now, is that Ian Foster went on there and announced his All Black captain. And of course, the prestige of being the All Black captain comes with a lot of honour. And that All Black captain that was selected, in rather interesting circumstances that there's no rugby on at the moment, is Sam Cane. Both Adam and Ben, I've talked to you about your thoughts about the All Black captain. Let's start off with you, Adam. What's your thoughts on Sam Cane's announcement and the circumstances why it was announced?
Well, it's a little bit unusual in that there are no games and no teams at the moment, but I suspect Sam Cane has been appointed because he's an experienced member of the team, very much a part of the leadership group that exists within the All Blacks. And also in this time of uncertainty and in a time where the All Blacks may want to present messages of conviction and of support, it's good to have a spokesperson. At the moment, we didn't have an All Black captain until yesterday, and having an All Black captain who confront a commercial, who confront a program like The Breakdown is something easier to identify with rather than an absent All Black captain. But in terms of Sam Cane being selected, there might be some questions around whether he's the best player in his position. He didn't start the World Cup semi-final last year. Artie Severe was preferred at 7, with Scott Barrett playing at blindside and Cane entering the game at halftime. So perhaps, Ben, there is some questions about whether Sam Cane, despite a wonderful career, is still the best guy in his position.
Well, what I'd say to that is, first things first, there is absolutely no doubt that he will have worked as hard on his fitness, strength and conditioning during this hiatus from the game as anyone. First thing you want as a captain, I suppose, who doesn't rest on his laurels. And he wouldn't. He is solid. What I love about Sam Cane, I mean, he pops up most of my mind when I think of this player in terms of his tackling. He's not flashy. Neither was Reid, neither was McCaw. He's solid. He tackles hard. He's always there or thereabouts the ball. You look at him and he's just a good young man, Sam Cane. He doesn't give you problems. You don't have to deal with anything on or off the field that you didn't want to deal with. Probably what you're talking about there adds, to me, it points to the strength of New Zealand rugby and the fact that we've got a number of very good back row forwards. And the fact that his place is by no means assured. Assured is probably, for me, I don't know if I've used the word or you, I would just simply say that he'll be under pressure for his spot, for his position, like anyone else in the side, and that will make him raise his game. I've got absolutely no doubt that when he runs out at whatever stage, for whatever team to start the season, that he will go out there and he will be a hard-working, contributing member. And I like that idea. I think that's when we go best. The less we say and we talk, that is, the less that comes from the team and the management, to be honest. And the harder they work on the field, just a sense of purposefulness. I like the fact, too, that he's not flash in the pan. I like the fact that he's an industrious tackler, doesn't miss too many tackles. He's solid. He's come back from, obviously, a neck injury. That would have finished most people off. And maybe it should finish people off, because if you've gone through that, the chances of, getting hurt again are very high. It's not a nice thing to contemplate, but such is the man's love of rugby, and such here again, his commitment to conditioning and getting himself back into shape, because as you well know these days, if there was any doubt from medical staff or coaches that he wouldn't be as safe as he could be, or that he wouldn't be safe out there on the field, he wouldn't be allowed to play by other parties. So I'm happy with the choice. I think we had to do something, because we didn't, as you say, we didn't have any Super Rugby form to go off. So we couldn't afford to have no cap. If we'd gone too much longer without a captain, that would have looked just as queer. So I can understand it. What do you think?
Well, one of the most curious All Black selections, apart from that of Sam Cane, that I can think of is the story of Murray Watts, who was a winger from Taranaki, was selected for the 1981 Scotland series, and he discovered he was in the All Blacks whilst on a urinal in a pub in New Plymouth, and he was embraced enthusiastically by his teammates at the pub even before he'd left the urinal. Such was the excitement. So it was unusual timing, but these are extraordinary times. And I guess Sam Cane, with Ardie Savea injured, with Sam Whitelock on sabbatical, was a logical choice. But I think you'd be annoyed if you were Duplessis Karifi. I think you'd be annoyed if you were Tom Christie. I think you'd be annoyed if you were the chasing flankers. And that position is essentially cemented for Sam Cane by his anointment as the captain.
It quite raised a good point there, Adam, because if we remember back in McCaw's early day, of course, there was Marty Holler. Marty Holler that used to play for the Chiefs in Waikato, and of course, he was a very accomplished number 7, Marty Holler, and often had to play second fiddle to McCaw. You can understand the likes of Karifi and Christie, particularly those two that have had sensational Super Rugby form. I've got a question here from our Facebook chat in regards to flankers. This is from Jack Torello. He's actually got 2, by the way. I'll read the first one out. Does Sam Cane's appointment mean Ardie will be playing number 8 for the All Blacks when he returns from injury, or will he go to Rugby League? And the second question is, apparently Adam's favourite singer is Shawn Mendes.
Adam, you got this one because you got the Mendes.
Shawn Mendes, the human pencil. Really, Shawn Mendes, that's a ridiculous assertion. Jack Travella, very fine young man, former washed-up head boy of Wellington College. Thanks for your question. Ardie Savea will most likely play number 8. In fact, he only played open side once for the All Blacks last year, and that was in that World Cup semi-final. But he started 12 of 16 games on the open side for the Hurricanes, so he has been a regular open side, more so than a 6 and 8. But the thing about Ardie Savea, his form was so accomplished last year, it wouldn't really matter where you put Ardie Savea. He would have had an impact on the game. In fact, I think Ardie Savea is potentially a future All Black captain. He speaks well. He commands the respect of his teammates. He's a very thoughtful and engaging and compassionate individual. And if he continues to play the rugby he played in 2019, overcoming his considerable injury and showcasing similar character to Sam Cane, then Ardie Savea, Ben, could be another All Black flanker to lead New Zealand.
What's going to be interesting, because when these guys come back, be it at whatever level, be it at club level, be it at representative level in some form, there's going to be rust. People are going to be nervous. They're going to put the ball down. They're going to throw forward passes. Because if you've had a number of months off, that's what people do. You can do all the training you want, but it's not till you get out there on the pitch that you start to get some feel for the game back. It's going to feel different. It's going to feel strange. And especially because, no matter if they're given a couple of weeks of contact training beforehand or whatever, you've got to get used to tackling people again, get within their bubble of 2 meters. That's going to take a little bit of getting used to. How hard do you go at training? There may be protocols. I'm not sure, as you know, at the moment people get blue cards for a suspected concussion, whatever. You're also, referees are going to be keeping their eyes open for cuts. They're going to be. It's going to be different. The game is going to be different. It's going to be managed differently. But we could end up valuing it all the more. And those back row forwards that you talk about, it is amazing. We talk about the depth in New Zealand rugby, but when push comes to shove, and we lose players at the top end in a big tournament such as the World Cup, it's amazing how all of a sudden there may only be one or two players with the genuine ability to step up in a position at any one time, no matter what depth may appear to exist. If you were to lose, say, Kane tomorrow, and so-and-so had to go up and wear a black jersey, that you'd have major doubts, no matter how good the boys look in Super Rugby level.
Cool, thank you very much, Ben. And there's some valid points there, and definitely selections. Whenever rugby gets back on, we'll certainly have some very interesting selections ahead. We're also going to just change subject from our glorious game of rugby. We're going to invite the young Hamish Rurum into the show. Now, Hamish, of course, follows football. I still call it soccer. The kids at school tell me off for calling it soccer. It's football now, sir. And so welcome, Hamish, to the Huddy Hui. Of course, you're a football man, as we know. Tell us about the football scene at the moment.
Well, there's not a lot going on, Brad. The Central League, which is the local football competition here in Wellington, was due to kick off on May the 27th and the 28th, the Saturday and Sunday, and then it was pushed back. At first thought that this would just blow over to early June. We're yet to hear anything, but a big note in national football is that the Chatham Cup and the Kate Shepherd Cup, the two national knockout competitions around New Zealand, have both been cancelled. The Chatham Cup, for the first time since World War II.
Well, Hamish, thanks for being on the program tonight. Hamish Wareham, just in case you don't know, folks, runs a very popular and successful college sport media production called Wareham Sports Media. He covers football, cricket, just about everything happening in the Wellington region. Hamish, you must be really struggling without sport, but tell us about your introduction to high school sport and the sterling photography and writing you do, much like Ben O'Brien Leaf with less weight.
Wasn't always so. Wasn't always so.
Well, it all began, Adam, in 2015. It started out as just cricket after I followed the scorecards religiously. Even when I was in year 9, I was still checking out the scorecards for Premier Grade cricket. And I met up with a family relation of mine who got me into photography and drove me out to Tawa College, and we started there for a cricket game between Hibs and Tawa. And he got me into photography, and then the writing sort of followed on from that. The last year, it's really taken off when I had the pleasure of meeting the Wellington Phoenix official photographer, Cameron McIntosh, who showed me a lot of new things about photography and adjusted my settings in the camera. And it's kind of like the situation I wish what I knew then is what I knew now, and I would have been off to a flying start.
And tell us about some of your highlights covering sport around the Wellington region, like Ben, like myself, like Brad, enthusiastic young guy covering sport, and some of those memories in the community sporting scene really live on in your memory.
Yeah, they do, Adam. Particularly last year, I really enjoyed the winter season. Out of all the college football rounds, I only missed one and got to do the final, and then went away to the college football nationals up in Napier in that first week of September. And I just really enjoyed getting out there each weekend, watching football, taking a few photos, and meeting parents who came up to me and asking, "Are you that Wareham Sports Media guy?" Kind of nervous to say yes based on what comes next out of their mouth. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And tell us about the state of secondary school football, because secondary school football was one of the first sports to announce that they can't play the national tournament in September, and that has massive ramifications, not only for football, but for other sports, because it sets a precedent. In terms of the football nationals, how many players, boys and girls, are involved in that?
Well, you've got 32 teams that are at the Premier Tournament, which was due to be held back in Napier this year. And then you've got about another 5 boys tournaments held all throughout the country, and about as many girls tournaments as well. So that's a whole lot of football players from all different schools looking to make their mark on a national stage.
Hamish, let's talk about the Wellington Phoenix. Of course, prior to the lockdown, the Phoenix were 4th in the A-League. And of course, like Rugby League and Super Rugby, etc., and many other sports, it has put into suspension. Now, of course, during the week, David Dome, the general manager of the Phoenix, came out and said that they were going to base themselves in New South Wales, possibly when this tournament restarts. So what have you heard about possibly the A-League restarting in July?
Yeah, I've heard basically what you just reiterated, Brad, and with major plans to restart it in New South Wales, as that's where most of the current clubs are from, so it would be easier to host them, I guess, in a central region. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the A-League restarting because it's been a really good season for the Phoenix, and we've got to see a few Kiwi players really thrive, such as Liberato Kakache and Cullen McCowart really impress on the A-League level.
Hamish Wareham is with us from Wareham Sports Media. Ben O'Brien Leaf too. Now, Ben, in terms of helping out a young guy starting in the sporting profession, what kind of advice would you give to Hamish fending off critics? Because as you mentioned, people can be very grumpy, especially at bloopers, and it's not easy to tolerate some of the abuse that you get.
No, well, it's probably first things first. If you want to get into covering sports, certainly the first few years that you're doing it, you can expect to be doing it for nothing. You don't get paid to do anything for a start. People aren't willing to pay you to do it for a start because they don't know if you're any good. They don't know if you're reliable, and they don't know whether your priorities will change and you'll end up doing something else. When you're around for a while, though, people get used to you, and they get used to the fact that you're there every Saturday. And that you do listen and that you do what you're supposed to do. For instance, whether you use your phone to record interviews, whether you use your phone to get, some grabs or some pictures, some shots of whatever it is that you're covering. For instance, if you've got your own website and you've got a phone, if you've got good coverage of important football, but you're also able, this is the advice I would give Hamish, if you're also able to get some grabs or to get some footage of say junior sports teams or festival days or tournament days, people love seeing the youngsters play sport. And if you can include their scores, junior team scores, junior competitions, people like that. And if they see you around the place and they get to recognise you, people may bring you things that they want you to cover every now and then, not very often, but I'll get people that'll come to me and say, hey, did you know about this, did it. And I'll make an effort to follow it up or hand it off to, a staff reporter who will. Once people know who you are, they know what you look like, they know what you do, they'll bring you stuff and make sure that you use it. People bring you scores, although to be honest, just a little note, if people bring you scores of games, always check it with at least one other reliable source so that you don't accidentally put the wrong score up. Somebody will be enthusiastic, say, hey, this was a great game. It was 4-3, did it. And you find out later on that it was actually 3-2. So just honestly check everything that people bring to you twice. Be consistent. If you have scores of teams, say in week 1, don't come back in week 3 with the next lot because people stop following you if you're not consistent. You don't have that sort of stuff up all the time. Hamish, you're in a brilliant position. Nothing like that was possible when I was your age. So, gee, it's a neat time to get into it. You can be creative. If you've got digital sense, you can make your page, for instance, or your website, whatever, more attractive. You can, honestly, she's a wide old world these days, and you can do great things. You can actually pop up on Google and say, hey, You can look at the pages and websites for different sports organisations and media coverage. You can look at what they do that's really neat. You can incorporate it. Probably one of the few things that's really good about having been around for a while, like I've got a mouth like a tap. I can talk forever. And I can just tell you that there are things you can find, maybe things like a watermark, which is, symbol of your organisation or media. Have a really neat, funky looking watermark that might be recognisable. Chuck it on your stationery, whatever you do, so that people see the watermark. They know who it's, who it's for and what it's about. Make sure that you acknowledge those people who bring you results and scores and things. Make it very clear right from the beginning that you can't afford to pay anybody for this content, but you're very grateful for their help. You've got to get started first. And I think you can do nothing but good things. You might help yourself, all up to you, by concentrating on, say, 2 codes. Because if you end up doing like 7 or 8 codes, man, it's just too hard. It's just too hard. You'll end up having to try and chase 5 different sports and 70 teams. And the more teams you're associated with or involved with, the more you've got to wait for people to get you back, the more you've got to text, the more you've got to whatever. And people don't often, it'd be nice if they always texted you their results. But the truth is, here in this country at least, people will text you and they'll ring you if they win. I promise. But if they lose, then they won't. And if they get a hiding, they almost certainly won't. And you'll ask them, well, what was the score? And they'll say, I can't remember, something big. So, yeah, I know what they're like. I know exactly what they're like. There are some news organisations that actually don't print scores of a certain type. For instance, you got a team that beats another team 70-3. They'll write it up as 70-35 because it's halfway. And, the kids still stink if they get a hiding and it gets published. So and by the way, you've got to run the real one. Even if people are upset, say, hey, that's not very good, too bad. You've got to run the real score, mate. If you don't run the real score, you get into trouble with the team that won. Everybody wins, everybody loses. So you've got to run the real scores. That's what I think. I think if you love what you're doing and if you enjoy it, it's also a neat way to just meet people, be involved. Now you've got a reason to be at the game. Instead of being Joe Lonely that goes there and sits by himself, you've actually got a reason to get a good seat and be enthusiastic about what you're doing there. Might be one of the main reasons all of us got into it, to be honest.
Well, thank you very much, Ben. That's awesome advice for someone as young as Hamish getting into the world of media. And Hamish, hopefully you got some fantastic advice there from a man who is heavily experienced in the sporting world of commentary and also media. Well, just to finish up, Ben, we've got 2 clubs in Wellington, Paniki and Marist St. Pat's, and of course it's a big love-hate relationship. Of course, there's a bit of debate on the Facebook feed at the moment of Doug Jones, who's in charge of the Paniki Rugby Club. He's a good man. He said, it would be great to get Ben down for a Paniki club game with Brad, Adam and Gordon commentating on the radio and also on their Paniki Facebook live stream. Now, of course, Paniki have really got into that. However, David Milne, he's come in and said, Ben's a big Marist man. We'll get him commentating with JP Tocker and Meacham commentating. So you're definitely is a battle for you to come down to Wellington to commentate a game of rugby.
Just before you go any further, Gordon, now there's a magnificent individual. And to catch up with Gordon, by the way, he bought me breakfast. We had this lovely breakfast. He bought me breakfast. When he was here for a tournament earlier this year, it was a Hurricanes tournament, a guy that Gordon Noble Campbell was talking about, a guy who's made a great contribution to secondary school sport as a referee, as a chairman, as a president, a real old-fashioned gentleman of the game. There aren't that many. People
Great
tell
Morris,
me that,
man.
Oh, yeah, Marist forever, obviously. And OBM is my club. I'm not ashamed to say it. I've got the job now of being fair to every single club in Poverty Bay, which I will be doing. I'll ingratiate myself to whoever I need to. I need to survive. I'll bow and scratch to whoever I have to continue to exist. That's my philosophy.
Well, Ben, it'd be awesome to have you down here. Hopefully. I
don't mind the bus. I enjoy the bus. I
enjoy the bus?
Yep, Mum used to sit me behind the driver. Yes.
Yeah, but we'll stop. We have to stop at Levin and take the Common Co again. That was a great experience, wasn't it, Ben?
The cleanest stuff. You know, it was. It was. I went there with Glenn Lama last year, and I thought that was really. I must have, I was nagging like a kid. I said, Glenn, can we go for dinner? Lovely guy, Glenn, but I wasn't going to miss out. We don't have Cobb and Co here in Gisborne. The ice cream sundae and the everything else. I just love going. Good memories, of being bloody 6 years old and opening your new toy on the carpet. I've always loved Cobb and Co. And it's neat to have any excuse to eat, really, and any excuse to go out to eat, to have friends go out with and have lunch and dinner. It's one of the neat things about coaching sports people is I get to, Ben again, what does he want? You get to annoy them to go out for dinner. Mainly it's just because you want it, really you that wants it. But they sort of feel a bit guilty or, it's a bit hard to say no, so I go. But I love it. It's been neat talking to you guys. You guys are very enthusiastic about your sport. And if I can say, because you probably won't say, you guys give good service to sport down there. It's not easy to cover sport down there as you do because there's a lot of sport. It's a bit easier in terms of getting around to cover sport where I am. It's not easy for you. You've got 50 teams and God knows how many grades of playing at a high level, and people want to see it done. It is not an easy job. I'm able to pace myself a little bit differently. I think I'm built for comfort, not for speed. So I'm able to take a little bit more time and deliberate a little, whereas you guys are, hey, pick the fingers, where is this? Where is this? Come on, it's supposed to be in. The time constraints with me, I'm lucky they're a little more liberal. But thanks for having me. And that young guy, what a neat kid. And I hope he carries on doing what he's doing. And I hope he does well. You guys now, sorry to preach, you've got a special responsibility. If you've got a young fella like that who's hooked up with you, any encouragement you can give, ring them up and tell them, hey, that was really neat, mate. Saw what you did. People are talking about that. That's pretty cool. Wow, that's pretty cool, really.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much, Ben, for coming on the Huddy Hui. Did you have a fried fish like Cobb and Co last year?
It was probably more what didn't I have? I had the garlic bread. The garlic bread was okay. I'd almost died remembering the lead up to that because I'd eaten a chicken that was bad.
Yeah.
I'd eaten a chicken that was bad, and I was really, really sick. So I told them that I wanted the white meat first. I had the pork. I said I was really looking forward to the steak. The steak is what it's all about, but I'm going to get the pork out of the way first. Because if I have the steak and then I can't do the pork, well, I stand more chance of finishing the steak off than, doing the damage to the steak and then, trying to deal with the pork. So I had the pork as a sort of, I don't know, you could call it an entree or whatever you want to call it. Then we had the steak and we had a chocolate sundae and we had about a gallon of Coke and it was neat.
Fantastic. I like Awesome. Thank you, Ben. You have a marvellous rest of your night and hopefully we catch up with you very soon, Ben. Awesome to have you. Hamish.
Please, you guys be good.
Thank you. Hamish, thank you for coming on for your first ever Huddy Hui and all the best with your media production. And no doubt we will have you on again during the year. So thank you, Hamish.
Thanks for having me, Brad. Been a pleasure.
And always, Adam, it's fantastic having you on with your wit and wisdom. And we'll let you head off and enjoy the rest of the night.
Well, a lot of fun having Ben O'Brien Leaf on the show tonight, and evidently I'm still trying to recoup the receipts from that Cop and Co visit 2 years ago. I remember the first time I met Ben in 2011. We went to the Lone Star on the waterfront in Gisborne, and he had the lasso of hog, the chocolate ice cream, the whole works. And I said, how on earth do you eat that much, Ben? And you put your arm on my shoulder and you said, you are what you eat, a connoisseur of life. Thank you very much for coming on and stay safe in Gisborne.
You guys be good.
Okay, thank you very much all. And to our audience, thank you for watching another episode of the Huddy Hui. And we will see you next Wednesday at 8 o'clock with our next guest. Ciao for now.